break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. Speaking of partners, Phil Mickelson now has less of them than he did about a week ago because he is no longer hosting the American Express. KPMG, Amstel, and Workday have ended their relationships with him, and KP Callaway is pressing the pause button, which I suppose just means we'll stop paying you for now and reevaluate how public perception is on you in a couple of months.
Yeah. So which of those sponsorships do you think pays him the most?
Well, Callaway.
I don't think that's actually true.
KPMG?
I think so. I think it's the corporate ones that are bigger. I think. That's not like I've not like
Are you saying because Callaway has a lot of people on the roster, their marketing budget gets spread out a bunch of different ways while KPMG has one guy and they can spend it all on him?
Yeah, and KPMG is like they're like a global corporation. Callaway is obviously a big corporation also, but I think you're dealing in different stratospheres there, like with KPMG and Workday and places like that. It's just different. I mean, I'm not saying Callaway is like a mom and pop shop. Like they make a ton of money, but even like when you're talking about huge companies, I think those contract, like those relationships are just different. And man, what a devastating 10 days for him. I'd like to actually poll you guys because I saw some of the talk on Twitter and I don't know. I can't decide which way I fall on this. Are you surprised that everybody has bailed?
No. But I think there's still a major part of this story to come out. We don't know about any repercussions from the PGA Tour or any of the major championships. And there's a chance that these companies know something that, I mean, you think about it. The PGA Tour doesn't publicize suspensions. And I'm not sure if they would publicize this one. But if he's suspended for a period of time, and you're a company like that, I mean, if it's a long time, you're losing a ton of value. So I think there's a lot more. I don't want to hypothesize here. I'm just saying there's a lot more to this story to come out that's yet to come out, and that'll be really telling one way or another. But it's just it's really bad press from a lot of different angles. Those comments, that the excerpts from Alan Shipnuck's book that came out were bad for they're bad if you're the PGA Tour, obviously. They're bad if you're Live Golf Investments and the Saudi Golf League, if you're Saudi Arabia, and anybody associated with Phil. There's no good that came out of that. And I think that when companies start to leave, it has a lot more to do with public perception than it does what actually happened. And that's just the way that it is, because that's also what they're paying him for. Public perception.
Yeah.
It's not about his results. It's about the perception. And Phil was a brand, and that brand all of a sudden looks completely different. So, I mean, it's so sad to me. But that I understand where the companies are coming from.
Three quick things. One, I think this is public. I think it was on the No Line Up message board. Somebody that works with Shipnuck at the Fire Pit said that they've read the book, and this is like there's like other stuff that's coming, and the one that just came out was the least incendiary of the other stuff that's coming. Which is
I heard that too. He came on definitely public because he came on Course Record and he came on A New Breed of Golf on Sirius XM too, and he told us the same thing. This is the tip of the iceberg, apparently.
And so to that point, and I think you said this well, it's almost like when you have like a mediocre college football coach, right? And they give you like an out, like they do something dumb publicly or whatever, and to where you can like fire them with cause. That's what a little bit what this feels like. Like we're just going to eject right now.
Yes, exactly.
On this, and then the last thing is I would be curious to know the aggrieved party here is PGA Tour, right? But from Phil's perspective, like the Saudi stuff is like, I don't know, whatever. The problem is that Phil and the PGA Tour are clearly at odds, and he didn't say anything about or apologize at all to the PGA Tour. I know Workday has a relationship with the PGA Tour. I presume KPMG has some. I just off the top of my head, I can't think of like a specific relationship that they have, but there's probably. I mean, you don't like the PGA Tour relationship with KPMG, with Workday, with whoever. That is for the next 50 years. The Phil thing is for the next like 10 at most, right? And so I think that plays into this quite a bit as well. It's not like Shipnuck tried to compare it to the Tiger sex scandal, and you're like, okay, I get where you're coming from, but Phil also like has a grievance against like a much bigger entity that these companies also have at least some of them have a relationship with, and that becomes problematic if you're one of those companies.
The difference between those two scandals to me is I'm saying this as a fan, which I think has an effect as a company. What Tiger did didn't affect me. It didn't hurt anything that I'm a fan of, right? I mean, it hurt Tiger, which pained me, but it affected just Tiger. And fortunately, the accident was the same thing. It only hurt Tiger, those actions and his family. Where Phil is coming after the group in the PGA Tour that provides us a job in a way, right? They provide us weekly content that we love to enjoy as fans. We love to cover as professionals. And so he's taking a shot at a whole bigger group of people. And he's saying that it's a bad, they're doing something wrong and they're not trustworthy and they're stealing. And nobody wants to believe that. Where Tiger really, I mean, he wasn't taking a shot at anybody. He did it to himself. He knows it. Everybody knows it. Does that make sense?
Well, but I think the argument there is, do you think if the PGA Tour doesn't exist that you don't have a job, or is it just your job looks different?
No, it's different. Very different. But if it's this hypothetical that all of a sudden the Saudi Golf League is the biggest thing going, you're talking about 14 weeks. Talking about taking away the schedule. I mean, we got 40 weeks to cover. That makes it a year-round job. Goes to just 14, that changes things dramatically, in my opinion. I mean, how many fewer columns would you write, Kyle, if the talk of the town was the Saudi Golf League versus the PGA Tour? It'd be a really different scenario, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say, because then you're talking about, well, is it just you have 3 big tours now, or you have, I don't know. There's just so many variables there. I think what's interesting, and I'm probably not going to write this because I don't know how well it would go over, but I think that the thing, like the point that Phil has, like and Rick asked this, like, did it work? Did what he did work? And in some ways, yes, right? Like, a lot of people have more money now because of some of the stuff Phil was doing. I don't know what is attributed to exactly what he was doing, but there's a column of like defending Phil that I'm not going to write.
Yeah, that you should not write that. Actually, write it and email it to me. I'd love to read it.
There's a column defending Phil that it's like, wait a second. We talk all the time about like, hey, golf is stuck 10 years ago, or the PGA Tour needs to do this or that or whatever. And I think in a lot of ways, he did it like the worst possible way you could ever do it. Right. But I think in a lot of ways, Phil was trying to like back his way into some of that stuff. Now, his like he did it like very clearly with like his own agenda in mind for like making himself a lot richer. So it was not what's the word I'm looking for? Like for the benefit of all, even though he tried to claim that it was. But I do think there's something there of like, wait a second, isn't this how progressive, like things progress, things get better? Now, again, the worst possible way you could ever do it. But I think some of the stuff that he was getting at and said, and everything that goes along with that, actually has some merit. If only somebody could do it in a much better way. Does that make sense, Rick? Do you agree?
He used the wrong formula and got the right answer type of deal, which is he got the defense of the PGA Tour to, and again, what part of this gets attributed to Phil specifically, and not just the external threat of another league where all this money gets injected. There's literally a $50 million popularity contest. Purses are through the roof. They double the Comcast business tour, whatever it's just like huge tons of money. They're probably going to do away with the fall portion of this schedule and make that better for the top guys. Like the results are going to get there, but yeah, like the whole thing where you hire your own lawyers to like draw up the operating agreement for your rival tour is like the worst possible way to go about it.
Well, the problem is he was doing it like a lot of the stuff that we talk about is betterment for the fans so that your product continues to improve in the long term.
Yeah.
And his was mostly betterment for the players, which I think has a role to play. Like I'm not against paying the top, like Tiger is woefully underpaid. Phil is woeful. Like all those guys are incredibly underpaid for how much. I mean, the stat that I put out last week, Tiger's made like $9 million at the Masters.
Yeah.
Like that's,
there's going to be 36 guys who surpass that.
Right. And like, think about how much money Tiger has generated, not just everywhere. And so, I don't know. I'm rambling now, but like I think Phil, he had one side of it, which is like, yeah, like there's some improvements to be made here. He did it horribly, and he also didn't address like, hey, what's best for like the fan experience so that our product in 10, 15, 20 years is still like really, really awesome.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with the fan aspect. There was very little early on when all these murmurings started coming out. There was some discussion about how to make it better for the fans, but it quickly turned into purely about the players.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some analysis you could do on that because they realize in order to, well, it's not the point I want to go down. It's just, it's under the bridge now. But the counterpoint you could possibly make to the defending Phil thing, and the counterpoint that I would make is the timing of this is very interesting to me because I do think the tour has had a large revenue increase for a couple reasons. One, with COVID, they were the only game in town and did a great job in that. And the popularity increased, at least it seems like it increased significantly. So that's one factor. And at the same time, sports gambling becomes legal. And they have some, I can't help but imagine there's a big influx of cash coming in from that. And so when you combine those two things, it feels like in one way, the tour was probably moving in that direction anyway, of getting more money to the players. Does it look different? Did it take longer? Possibly. I don't know. But I don't think this is purely, I don't think all these increases are purely coming from the threat of the Saudi league. You still have players in the pack. You still have, I mean, all the players who have come out and talked about it, who have knowledge of the financials, have said the money's going to the right place, and it's all out there. And unless there's some crazy scandal going on, something very illegal, which is highly, I mean, almost 99.99999% doubtful to me. Unless there's something like that going on, it would have gotten to the players eventually, because the players see, at least some of them see these financials. And I don't see anybody sitting here getting rich that shouldn't be on the PGA Tour. So this is part of the thing I don't understand with Phil.
I do think that you have to have a disproportionate amount of your money go to your stars, right? Like if you look at the NBA or NFL, like the one of the PGA Tours, like why are they doing the thing where it's like if you play 15 times you get $50K?
I hate that.
Like I don't. Brian Stewart doesn't deserve 50K more. Like he doesn't like, why are you paying him 50K? Like all of that money should be given to Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Brooks Koepka, and Dustin Johnson.
But without those guys, they don't. I guess this is the other side of that. You have players who are out there struggling to make cuts, who are they're in that league, right? They've made the PGA Tour, and there are players who have lost money because they cover all their own expenses. That doesn't happen in the NBA. You don't have to pay anything in the NBA. You get paid, you get on a salary and you get paid. And while the proportion changes, nobody's losing money in the NBA. You're one of the top 200, let's say 250 players in the world, top 250 individual in the world. And you're going to go to an event and lose money because you missed the cut. You're still providing entertainment for 2 days. So, I mean, I would argue they should get paid every week, whether they make or miss the cut. And I think the $50,000 thing for the 15 players, or for players who played 15 events, is a way to soften that. You go play, you make or miss the cut, you're not losing money.
But who are you providing entertainment? Who's Brian Stewart providing entertainment to?
Well, you create the field. You
create
the competition.
No, but listen, like you've been to these events, like there's like 8 people following Brian Stewart and he's not on TV. So if he is providing entertainment, that means he's on TV and in contention and he's getting paid.
I mean, not necessarily. You're talking about pro-ams. You're talking about you're on the driving range in the practice area where people are watching all of the players, seeing this talent, seeing the exposure. I mean, it's not as direct and it's not a huge deal. I'm not saying they should have their media rights here for what their coverage is on TV. I'm just saying they shouldn't be out there competing at the very highest level and losing money.
Phil might have lost the plot when he started talking about having your own media rights. Like that was a breakdown in knowing how business works.
So for Phil's future, because I think and we'll move on after this, but the other thing that I thought was interesting is we were trying to figure out how big of a deal this is, whether this is a golf Twitter deal or whether it's a bigger deal. And I think it's bigger than I originally anticipated. There's been New York Times articles about it. Obviously, the political aspect of it has taken it to kind of a different echelon. So, Greg, like, where does Phil go from here? Maybe he's suspended. Maybe he's not. Is he going to show up at Augusta National, which even if he was suspended by the PGA Tour, has the right to do that? Like, what is the reception for Phil Mickelson when he tees it up on a golf course again?
Extremely awkward, no matter what. But I don't know. I mean, look, the Augusta National, the Masters is an invitational, and just because he's a past champion, it's not a right, Rick. It's an invite, and it's a tradition. And if they don't want this activity, they can rescind the invitation, and they can do. And there is absolutely no problem with that. They can do whatever they want. And so I don't know. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I do believe that Augusta National, the Masters, and the PGA Tour are whatever happens, they're going to be very closely connected. They're going to be aligned here because they're very strong partners. And there have been some stories come out that I've heard that I don't need to get into, but they only bring those two entities closer together from what I've seen. But I think Phil's chance, when you see him play again, honestly, I think it comes down to what happens with what did those comments do to Live Golf Investments? Because I think his last chance, he could go play the Asian Tour in what Greg Norman has created, I call it the Rolex series of the Asian Tour. And other than that, I don't know what else he can do. I mean, I've gone back and forth on this. Like, would it be egregious to ban Phil for life from the PGA Tour? And if I thought that was going to happen, or if it did happen, because I was hypothesizing about this, well, yeah, it'd be a little aggressive to do that. But then a friend of mine said, well, what if you went on your podcast with CBS Sports and started complaining about CBS Sports publicly and trying to start a new media company or something where the talent has these crazy rights? You'd be gone before it wouldn't even get out there. You'd be gone and you'd never get hired back. So if you look at it from a real world perspective, everybody watching right now, if they did what Phil did, would get fired. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how the PGA Tour is going to handle it.
That's a great point. Can you imagine Greg getting on here and being like, listen, I've been talking to North Korea and I'm going to go. And here's why.
He's going to grow the game over there.
And I know what they do there. And I'm okay with that. I want my old podcast. I want my YouTube videos in my hands. I don't want them on YouTube anymore. I want to sell them on the digital streets as NFTs. I don't even know if you can do that. I'm just making this up as I go.
Probably.
I know.
And it would be like, I mean, it is incendiary. Like it's almost like, you know how the Phil PGA win it's gotten crazier as time has progressed.
For sure.
I sort of feel that way about the quotes, like about the Saudi Arabia quotes. In the moment when I read them, I was like, oh, this is nuts. Like, I cannot believe he said this. And every day since then, I'm like, that was even crazier than I thought it was in the moment, because we were so immersed in all that stuff in the moment that it's kind of hard to tell like what's what. And I don't know, you're kind of swimming in it. And the further away we get from it, I think the crazier we're going to look back and say that it was. I guess Augusta is where he shows up. Augusta is a weird play. Like, I'm with Greg. Like, it didn't feel like from his statement, it felt like he was going to double down on not playing the PGA Tour. Like, there was nothing. If you weren't going to double down, wouldn't you be like, look, I screwed this up. The PGA Tour has been awesome, and I got paid $8 million last year for like tweeting about my legs, and like I've loved it. But he didn't do any of that. So it's like, is he going to just try to be a barnstorming retiree who plays in the major championships? It's kind of what it feels like.
It certainly does. We're 39 days away, I believe it is, from finding out whether he shows up at Augusta National or not. And obviously we'll know a couple days before that. Plenty more, Phil, to talk about, I'm sure, but we're going to put a pin in it there. We've got to